Hi friends! Today I'm taking you through some pictures and videos that I got while I was kayaking. So when I go kayaking, I go out onto the river and you'll get to see pictures of that in just a minute. But first, I wanted to show you some pictures of the nature and wildlife that I saw. Right here we've got a tree on the side of the river where a woodpecker, this guy right here, has bore out some holes. So these little holes right here are how we know a woodpecker has been to visit this tree. And when you hear a woodpecker, you know it's them because it sounds like someone knocking on wood. And then here is a picture I took of the bank of the river, which is where all this trees meet the water. And in this little area is where you find all kinds of animals, like an alligator, or a water moccasin, or a snapping turtle. And luckily I did not come across any of them while we were kayaking, so I don't have any pictures to show you from my phone, but these are some that I found on the internet. And then here you can see, so these are two different boat launches, which is how you get into the river to start out with. Here you can back your truck up, as you see this car doing, and drop it into the water where it's really shallow, and then you get on your boat there. Whereas here it's really shallow, all right here by this guy's house, and so you can just kind of walk in. And then there's my brother, he's kayaking with me. So on the river, as we were going up it, we got to see some people's houseboats. This is a houseboat, and that's where people live on the water. So this right here actually can detach from the land and go floating down the river. And they live in there. They've got kitchens and beds in there. And then here, we've just got an example of someone who's got a dock for their boat. And so they drive up, there's some road back here, and they get in their boat, and then they're good to go on the river. And then down here, we've got someone that's got a boat launch, and their house is back here in the woods, if you can see that. And then kind of same thing here. This person's boat's right on the river. They've got a few awnings over the river, a little shed, and they live back over here. So there's lots of different ways to get into the river and to live on the river. Alright. Okay guys, so now we're going to go down the river. You're going to see it from my point of view on the top of my kayak. And there's my mom. She went kayaking with me. But the reason the camera sways a little bit is because when you're kayaking, you paddle with one oar, like you see my mom holding. And so you just paddle on your left, then your right, on your left, then your right. So the boat kind of sways a little as you're moving down the water. And while we're going down the water, you can see the banks where the trees meet the water, kind of like the picture from the first slide. And remember, in all this like bushy trees and grass is where animals like alligators and turtles and snakes and birds and frogs and all kinds of stuff like to live, because that way they can go into the water easily and then go back to land. And you can see the water is pretty calm where we are. We're in a smaller, like, offshoot from the river. So this little river that we're on is fed by the bigger river that you'll see at the end of the video. And on the right, you can see the grass that's in the water and a few lily pads where smaller creatures like to live. And as we're going, you can see how the boat's swaying left and right. Also on the left, you can see where a tree's fallen in the river, and that's pretty normal during storms or If it's really windy, the trees fall into the river where they'll eventually just decay while animals and the water use it and rub up against it. And all these trees that you're seeing on the bank of the river are called evergreen trees. Oops, almost lost my phone. Are called evergreen trees and pine trees because they stay green the entire year. So they might shed a few leaves, but for the most part they stay green, unlike a lot of the trees we have in Chicago. And you can tell we're getting closer to the main river because the water's speeding up a little bit. You can see how it's going by faster. The main river is much bigger, and so the water moves faster, and it's much deeper than the water that I'm currently in on the kayak. And to my right, oops, let me pause it. There are closer picture of the lily pads. And so these little lily pads are like giant leaves that have one stem that go down to the bottom of the river, and they feed, that's how they get their nutrients. And lots of smaller animals like frogs or bugs like to live around here because it offers them protection from the bigger animals. And then up here in the trees, this fuzzy, furry looking stuff is called Spanish moss. And Spanish moss grows from trees like this. And in the Spanish moss are a lot of little insects. Sometimes they're so small you can't even see them without having a microscope or something to magnify them. And then right where the water meets the trees and it's pretty dark, that's exactly where snakes or maybe alligators, moms and baby alligators, like to live because it's nice and cool and they can hide their babies or their eggs from other animals. And so now you can start to see where the water opens up and the bigger river is feeding into the smaller offshoot that we're on. All those trees straight ahead are the other side of the river. So that's the other bank. And it is pretty cloudy on this day. You can see that the water is only reflecting a little bit of sunlight. A storm, I think, was coming that afternoon. And the water's definitely picking up. It's going a little faster. And I think I'm going to turn the kayak in a minute so you can see how the river flows north and south. So right now we're sitting on the east side of the river, or the right side of the river. And this part of the river is much deeper than where we just were. So where we started out in the video was probably maybe 10 feet deep. And where I am now, it could be as deep as 20 and 30 feet deep. So imagine like a 2-3 story building is how far down this water goes. And now the kayak's turned, we're looking south. And you can see that the water flows past us. So the water is flowing south. And it'll eventually come from the river that we're in into the Mobile Bay, which is a slightly bigger body of water. And then from the bay, it's going to flow into the Gulf of Mexico, which is huge. It's, looks like an ocean if you just walk up to it on the beach. And you can see off in the distance this tall metal structure just left of my kayak in the picture is a power line. So these power lines are how people that live out here get electricity. And it flows across the river and into the woods. And we'll keep turning. Now you can see the bank where we just came out of. The bank of the river where all these trees are. We're turning. There's my mom again. And that's the little offshoot stream that we just came out of. So you can see how the water's flowing into there. And it's carrying nutrients. It's carrying animals into it. Now we're going to turn north. Okay, so looking north, I know it looks like it ends where those trees are, but the river turns just a little bit and it goes north. And so the river comes from water that comes from mountains. And so it flows a long way to reach where we are here. And it flows from the north to the south. And we'll just keep turning. There's the west bank again. Now we're looking south. And now we're looking back east, where we came from. And that's all. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.